Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Perfect! As our colleagues who couldn't quite find a place to park make their way in, say hi to them as quickly and quietly as we can. We'll get them going, and here we go. So, pardon me as I read to you so I can be quicker this morning. Here we go. Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. You know this. Why am I reading my script? Because that's what I do. I'm Darwin Stifler, the proud superintendent of Peoria Unified, and it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Weston Kieschnick. You're going to love him. Weston is a thought leader in blended learning about what the best of old school and new school, and he does this from a practitioner's perspective. So let me tell you a tiny bit about him. He asked me not to do this. I'm going to do it anyway. He's a senior fellow at the International Center for Leadership and Education. He co-authored The Learning Transformation, a guide to blended learning for administrators. He also created and hosts Teaching Keating, an acclaimed podcast featuring educators from around the country. Mr. Kieschnick's teaching career began internationally in Hamilton, Bermuda, where he served as both a teacher and department chair for social studies. During that time, he was a 3-time recipient of the public school's Most Influential Teacher Award. For the past 14 years, Weston Kieschnick has been sought after by U.S. and European consulting firms to deliver instructional coaching, develop curriculum, and facilitate professional development seminars. His travels have afforded him the opportunity to work with students, teachers, and administrators from every state in the United States and more than 30 countries around the world. In 2009, Kieschnick moved to Denver, Colorado, to shift his focus from traditional models of education to online and blended learning. Sound familiar? Since then, he has worked as a blended learning teacher, instructional coach, assistant principal, instructional development coordinator, and dean of education. Weston resides in Colorado with his wife Molly and his children Everett and Charlotte. This is going to be good. Here we go. Everybody, Weston, they're all yours. Give it up for Weston, everybody.
Thank you, Darwin. I appreciate you. Morning, everyone. Good, and good morning to everyone who is watching at our satellite sites. We're broadcasting to what, 5 other sites at the moment? I told Darwin when he got up here, he said, I'm going to read all this about you. And I said, please don't do that. And then he did, anyway. So thank you for that. Literally, I know that at the beginning of our time together, because you don't know me and I don't know you, I'm supposed to tell you my bio. But there is literally one thing that you need to know about me. And that thing is this. I love teaching. Yes. Thank you. That concludes our time together. Right? I like to start and end with applause. I love teaching. I love teaching so much, it's a problem. I'll say this before we get started. If anything I say today resonates with you or strikes a chord, feel free to tweet it out at #BoldSchool, or they've also let me know that you guys are going to be using a hashtag #WestonSpeaks. I told my wife about that hashtag before I left. She had some things to say about it. And she was committed to responding to all your tweets with #Weston'sWifeIgnores. And I was like, no, please don't. No, please don't. Speaking of my wife, here's my wife and my 2 lovely children. Here you go, obligatory. Aw, there it is. Yeah, thank you. Wow, well done. This is my wife and my 2 children, Everett and Charlotte. They're the reason why I do what I do. They're the reason why we all do what we do, right? We're going to talk about blended learning. We're going to talk about individualization and personalization today, but let's not get it twisted. What we're talking about today are children. Your children, my children, our children. All right? I told you, I don't even have to give you my bio. My bio is this. I love teaching. I love teaching so much. I married a teacher, which means my 2 children will grow up to be? Teachers. Resentful is the word. Let's be honest. Resentful is the word. Of course they're not going to grow up to be teachers, because when they come home from school, what do they hear mom and dad talk about? More school, right? I love teaching. I love teaching. It is also worth noting that my wife is half Puerto Rican, half Irish. I don't think you heard me. She is half Puerto Rican, half Irish, which means we have robust conversations about education at my house. I lose a lot. But these are the reasons why I do what we do. Before I get started, I'd like you to do me a favor. With the person sitting next to you, I want you to take 30 seconds. How long? Whether you're in the auditorium or you're watching from a different auditorium, take 30 seconds and read what is on the screen with the person next to you. You have 30 seconds, every word. On your mark, get set, go. "15 seconds remaining. Get every word. Come on in, join us. 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And go ahead and bring it back to me. Good. Here's what I'd like you to do before I ask somebody to read this. I want to see how good of listeners you are. Here's what's going to happen. And if you're participating in a satellite location, join us. I'm going to stand on the stage like this. When my hands cross, the minute they get to this point, I would like you to clap your hands. Let's practice one time. Here we go. Good. Join me. Join us wherever you are as well. Here we go. Sometimes things look easy, but in actuality, they are hard. Good. Anyone out there, show of hands, anyone out there think they can read this whole thing, all 3 lines? I can see you. I know the house lights are down, but I can see. Yes, you think you got it? With my partner. She says, with my partner, yes. Good. Go ahead, all 3 lines.
We are fighting the rebels with only one hand where we should be striking with both.
Let me go back to it. I was like, she's doing too well. Good, and there we go. Go ahead.
Unchain that black hand, Frederick Douglass, December 11th, 1861.
Give her a round of applause. For getting it almost 100% correct. We are fighting the rebels with only one hand when we should be striking with both. Unchain that black hand. Hey, still very, very good, very good. I'll tell you what, I was a high school history teacher for 12 years. I apologize, but not really. You can take the guy out of the history classroom, but you can't take the history teacher out of the guy. All right? The internet is awesome. Do you know what you're looking at right now? This is a handwritten document from Frederick Douglass, written to then President at the time, Abraham Lincoln, imploring him to allow black soldiers to fight in the Union Army during the Civil War. This is an amazing piece of history, and you can access it via the internet at the click of a button. And I'll tell you what, as a history teacher, I would get super excited. I would show this stuff to my students. They would get decidedly less excited for any number of reasons. What's the biggest reason I could show this to kids right now and they would not be excited about it? They can't read it. Why not? It's in cursive. Do we teach cursive anymore? Some of you are like, yes. Some of you are like, no. I'll tell you what, progressively, as you travel across the country, are more people teaching cursive or are fewer people teaching cursive? Fewer. You know why? Because somewhere along the way, we got sucked into the thing that we almost always get sucked into in education, which is this pendulum swing, right? Who used to learn cursive? Raise your hand. Good. Everybody, right? We all used to learn cursive. Now all of a sudden, somebody decided along the way that, hey, cursive's not important. What if people started teaching in its place? Keyboarding. And guess what? Now we're starting to get the message, hey, keyboarding's not important because voice to text is a thing, right? I'll tell you what, cursive is an old school skill that we cannot abandon for the sake of new school tools. And this is a theme that shows up in education. Right? It's a theme that shows up everywhere where we start to abandon things that are old simply because they are old and then move exclusively to things that are new. But the fact of the matter is, success lives in the place where we can combine things that are old with things that are new. Let's talk more about this. Want to know the biggest fear that teachers have about blended learning and personalized learning? I'll tell you this. It's that the arrival of blended learning represents the departure of everything they love about teaching and learning, right? And I want to make something very, very clear, all right? No one is here to take away from you the things that you love about teaching and learning and the things that work with kids, right? Because let's talk about this for a second. I want to make a couple of bold statements. Number one, education is not broken. Show of hands, how many of you have heard this phrase that education is broken? Can I be honest with you? We've known each other about 6 minutes now. I find that phrase insulting. I find it really insulting, right? It is insulting to me as an educator. It is insulting to every educator that I've had who has brought me to this place in time, and it is insulting to the educators like yourselves who are walking into classrooms, working hard with kids every single day to make sure they're successful. I'll tell you this also, it just ain't true. Education is not broken. In 1910, the graduation rate nationwide was 8%. And in 2015, we set a record with a graduation rate of 83% nationwide. Now, is 83% where we want to be? No, but it's growth, because guess what? In 2015, we set that record. Guess what year we beat? 2014, which beat the year previously, 2013, of 3 consecutive record graduation rates. I'll tell you this, since the 1970s, the National Assessment of Educational Progress has tracked 9, 13, and 17-year-olds. The latest results show steady and solid gains in both reading and math for each age group. Education is not broken, but we seem so hell-bent on breaking it. Can we not do that? Right? Let's hold on to the things that we know work with kids while blending digital tools with purpose to individualize and personalize on behalf of children. So what does that even look like? Hold on. Before I get too deep, let me ask if you remember a few things. I'm gonna take you down memory lane. How many of you remember one of these? Hey, show of hands if you remember when you got the long cord on one of these. Yeah, it's like, oh, hey girl, how you doing? No, I'm just gonna go to my room. Hold on, there's a knot in the cord. I'll get it. Right? We remember that. We remember that. I remember using the internet for the first time. How many of you remember using the internet for the first time? Right? Like, dee-doo, dee-doo, shh. I remember. How many of you remember these? Kids have no idea that the word Wikipedia is an iteration of the word encyclopedia. I'll tell you what, I grew up really poor. I grew up very poor in eastern Iowa. I'll tell you this, you want to know how poor I grew up? Let me say this first. I didn't know I was poor until I was older. I had everything that I needed growing up. My parents loved me a lot. But I don't remember sleeping in a bed till middle school. I shared a room with my 2 sisters. But I'll tell you what, we had encyclopedias in our house. We got them for a penny when we got pots and pans at the grocery store. Remember, some of you are like, I don't remember that deal. Well, you weren't poor. And I'll tell you, there were times where I'd go over and I'd open one of these encyclopedias and my dad would say to me, no, those aren't for reading. You go to the library if you want to read an encyclopedia. Those are show encyclopedias. Don't bend the bindings. How many of you remember one of these? Click. Hey, let me ask you this question. People in the audience in other locations too, how many of you remember being the remote control for this? Right? It was like, hey, turn the channel. 1, 2, 3. I hope you found something you liked. I tell my kids this all the time. I'm like, hey, there was a time when TV used to end. It just used to be done for the day. Remember the national anthem would come on? And then, all right, no more TV today. This one's going to get you. Are you ready? This next one, listen for it. Did you hear it? Did you hear a couple of the women? Oh! Remember when this was texting? Remember when how much you liked or disliked a person depended on how well you were folding their note? This one has 2 diamonds on the top. You're welcome. You're welcome. Like, we remember all these things. Now, I apologize. Any millennials in the room? Millennials, I apologize. This last 10 minutes has not been for you. And I know that's upsetting for you. That was the sound of some people not buying my book. But we remember all this, right? We remember all this. We grew up in a world that was decidedly analog. And we now find ourselves living in a world that is decidedly digital. And by the logic that it permeates our field, we should all be squirreled away in a dark room somewhere, completely unable to adapt to this new world that we live in. But we're not. We're here, right? I host a podcast on education. I wrote a book where I worked with my editor and my publisher back and forth in Google Docs, right? I interface with people all around the world using video conferencing products. Like, we're able to do this. Why are we able to do this? Because we had great teachers, period. So what does that mean for us? If we all grew up without technology, how are we able to function in a society saturated with it? The answer is simple. It is you. It is you. Now let me say this, all right? The world's greatest teachers, now some of you are out there right now, and let me jump into your brain, you're like, yeah, that's right, I'm an old school teacher. Try to bring some technology into my classroom, I dare you. Dare accepted. I'll tell you this, and Darwin was nice enough to share this at the start. I have traveled, I've worked with teachers in every single state in this country and more than 30 countries around the world. Let me save you a ton of travel and tell you what the most masterful teachers do. The most masterful teachers on this planet do not simply identify anymore as either old school or new school. Whether they know it or not, they identify as bold school. So bold school is simply a mashup of the word blended learning and old school. You mash them together and you get bold school, because bold school teachers understand that old school wisdom is essential in order to take kids where they need to be, but they also understand that our children now grow up in a world where devices are omnipresent. And we need to figure out how to make them productive with those devices if they are to be successful. So how the heck do we do that? Simple. We live by one adage, and that adage is this: technology is awesome, teachers are better. Technology is awesome, and teachers are better, and both of them deserve a place in our classrooms. How do we do that? We have to be aware of blowing up our planning by asking the wrong question. I'd like you to do me a favor. Go to this website, spritzinc.com. You have 90 seconds. Here is your task. Be able to go to this website and tell me what this does in the next 90 seconds. Go. If you're at a satellite campus as well, spritzinc.com. Go to the website, just figure out what the heck this even is and what it does. 90 seconds. If you're wondering, just hit the play button. It will tell you a lot. spritzinc.com, hit the play button. If you're feeling brave, increase the speed. 60 seconds. If you're unable to get a signal, jump on with somebody next to you who's on. Just rubberneck over there, see what they're doing. Good, I heard it's an e-reader. Makes it easier for students to read. How? Good, they focus on one spot, and then all this stuff just appears really quickly. Good. Thank you very much. So it's a speed reading site, yes or yes? That's the right answer, right? It's a speed reading site. Good. Close your devices for just a moment. If you didn't get a chance to take a look at it, that's fine. Look at it later. I'm not here to debate the merits of whether this is a useful site or not a useful site. Quite frankly, I don't care, right? But speed reading, old school or new school thing? Old school. Speed reading's been around for a while, but this site has repurposed it so it looks like something new school. Here's the interesting thing. And here's the thing that is happening in schools across the country and around the world, right? What's happening is educators will stumble on a site like this or on a thing like this, and they'll just be like, oh, this is cool, right? Like, it's kind of cool, right? When you take a look at it and you realize, like, wow, man, like, this is kind of cool, right? This is happening all over the country. All over the country. Because what's happening is, like, We are falling victim to cool, right? So what's happening is like learning management systems are showing up, and we're just like, oh man, a learning management system like Canvas or Google Classroom, like cool, right? I can house all my stuff in this. Oh man, like the G Suite for education, like Google Docs and Google Slides, cool, right? Oh man, you know what? The kids are all getting Chromebooks or iPads or laptops, cool, right? Oh man, you know what else is really cool? Poll Everywhere. Somebody showed me Poll Everywhere the other day. That's really awesome, cool, right? Oh man, Poplet. Poplet is awesome. I can do concept mapping in Poplet, cool, right? Oh man, Nearpod. It's like PowerPoint, but it's not really like PowerPoint, but it's basically just PowerPoint, cool, right? Oh man, there's Padlet. I can have kids collaborate in Padlet, cool, right? Oh man, you know what? Interactive whiteboards. Interactive whiteboards are awesome. That's really cool, right? I mean, mine's holding flip chart paper right now, but it's kind of cool, right? Oh man, Edpuzzle. I can make my own video, cool, right? Oh man, Twitter is really awesome. I can connect with educators all around the world. Cool, right? It's exhausting. And how do we keep up? It's difficult. And I'm going to ask you to beware of this situation. I'm going to ask you to beware of cool, right? Because what happens when we venture down the path of cool, right, is we get to a place where we ask, what am I going to do with blank today? All right, what am I going to do with Chromebooks today? Okay, what am I going to do with collections today? Okay, what am I going to do with Edpuzzle today? And the minute we ask that question, the minute that becomes the question that guides our teaching and learning, that's where blended learning dies. And it dies immediately right there in that moment. We have to stricken that phrase from our vocabulary as masterful, blended, personalized educators. It can't be about what's cool. It has to be about what works. Well, Weston, how do we do this, right? With all of this stuff, how do we do this in such a way that we are able to wrap our heads around the tools that we have available, but still stick to old school wisdom and learning? The answer is simple. Free up your hands for me. Free up your hands for me. I'm going to ask you to do this along with me. If you are in a location other than this room, it's going to be embarrassing for you, but work with me. Right? Some of the people who are not sitting in this room are looking at the tape right now, and they're just like, well, I'm not going to participate. Please do. Please do. Good. Here's the first thing we need to do. When we are planning great blended learning, when we are planning great personalized learning, the first thing that we have to look at, show me, make an O above your head. The first thing we look at are outcomes. They are what? Oh, that was weak. The first thing we look at are what? Outcomes. The first thing we did before technology arrived is still the first thing that we do after the arrival of technology. We ask ourselves, what are our learning outcomes? What are the things that we want to accomplish with kids? Step one in the process is what again? Show me, show me, show me. One more time. Step one is? Good. Know that I see you. Know that I see you. Then we move over here to step number 2, right? Step number 2, go ahead and take an S. Make it, put an S on your chest like Superman. Good. Now take that S, turn it to the person next to you, and ask if it's backwards. Many of you are. Flip it. There you go. Step number 2 is strategies. What is step number 2? Show me, show me, show me, show me, show me. Even if you're not with us, show me. Step number 2 was what again? And step number 1 was what? Good. We ask ourselves, what is the learning outcome? And then step number 2 is we ask ourselves, what high effect size instructional strategies will allow us to meet that learning outcome? Have we talked about technology yet? No. Right? When I say high effect size instructional strategies, whose work am I referencing? It could be Marzano's, but I'm referencing John Hattie. Show of hands, how many of you are familiar with John Hattie's work? Good. His book, Visible Learning, I'll tell you this. John Hattie's book, Visible Learning, is, in my opinion, the most important thing that's been written in education in the last 50 years. And I say that having no affiliation to him whatsoever. He does not work for the company that I publish for. I'm an author. I talk to authors every day who try to convince me their book is the most important thing published in the last 50 years. It's not. I believe it's John's. All right? Here's what I'd like you to do. Take 2 minutes with the person next to you, and I'd like you to gain 2 minutes of expertise on John Hattie and his work on effect sizes, Hattie. 2 minutes worth of expertise. Go. 60 seconds left. You're only going to get to gain 2 minutes worth of expertise, but gather as much as you can. You'll find a lot of charts. You'll find his book, Visible Learning for Teachers. You're on the right track. Final 20 seconds. Gather all that you can. And then let's play a game, shall we? Let's play a game to see how much we know and or don't know about John Hattie and John Hattie's work. How many of you have seen or used Kahoot in the classroom? Some of you are like, yes! I'll tell you what, Kahoot is one of the most, not underutilized, but is one of the most poorly utilized tools that I see teachers use in the classroom. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Right? Let's play Kahoot. We're going to play the largest game of Kahoot you've ever played. Everyone in this room is free to join. Everyone in rooms away from here is also free to join. You just go to kahoot.it, Kahoot.it, and put in code 971544. So even if you are not in this room, you can play along with us. Go ahead and put in your name. Put in your name. Some of you are like, oh, my name's up there. Yeah, that's how it works. Take 30 seconds. Join the game. We're going to play a game of Kahoot with a few thousand people. If your phone's not working, feel free to partner up and play with the person next to you. Help them out. Folks are jumping in. We're almost up to 200. We're now over 200 players. Final 10 seconds. Join us if you can. It is Kahoot.it. If you are not able to see in the rooms far away from here, the code is 971544. 971544 is the code. Join us. We're up to almost 600 players, both inside this room and out. Isn't technology amazing? Approaching 700 players. Last 5 seconds to join the game. 4, 3. Some of the people in other rooms are like, count slower, 2. I'm trying, but I only have like 20 more minutes. 1. And we're at 800 players. Let's start the game. Here we go. 5-question Kahoot based on John Hattie's work. All right, remember, you're scored for both time and accuracy. Teachers want to utilize strategies with an effect size that is equal to 4, higher than 40, that gives kids 40% growth, or is greater than or equal to 0.4. Go ahead and lock in your answers now. Keep in mind, we're down to 10 seconds. Points for accuracy first and foremost. Secondly, points for speed. Lock those answers in, and here we go. Let's take a look. Show of hands. When you took a look at John Hattie's work, how many of you saw a bunch of charts? Show of hands? Good. If you go back and look, you'll see a ton of charts, and you'll see 195 instructional strategies. Because what John Hattie did is a meta-analysis of basically every instructional strategy that is used with children. And he gave each one of them a ranking, an effect size. He assigned each one a point value. And the interesting thing is, the number you need to remember is 0.4. What is it? 0.4. One more time? 0.4. If you were looking at John Hattie's work and you see that big chart, and you find an instructional strategy that has an effect size of 0.4, here's what that means. That instructional strategy will give you the equivalent of a year's worth of growth over a single year's worth of academic time. So my question to all of you is, do we want to utilize strategies that have an effect size that is lower or higher than 0.4? Higher, all day, all day, right? Let's take a look at the leaderboard here real quick. JA9, are you in this room? Yes, very good. Very good. What's her name? Janine. Janine is leading the way. Tom is close behind. B&B, Pioneer Rules. Those are fight words. And she, you say it like it's cheating. She's a psychologist. Good. I'm sorry? Next question. Dr. Hattie's work is a meta-analysis of how many individual educational studies? It is a meta-analysis, meaning it is a study of many, many different studies. Is it 1,200, 1,000, 800, or 600? Lock those answers in. We're down to 10 seconds. Final 5, lock those answers in. 3, 2, 1, 0. The answer is 1,200. John Hattie's work is a meta-analysis of over 1,200 different collections of studies. It is the most robust research that exists in education, right? 1,200 different studies. It grows every single day. Hey, how many of you recognize Kahoot? Old school or new school game? It's an old school game. Anyone remember those bar quiz games where you'd get the little controller and you'd lock in the answer for speed and for accuracy? Good. If someone next to you is nodding their head, that's the person you want to hang out with during happy hour today. Right? If you're not a happy hour person, someone is nodding their head next to you, maybe stay away from them after school today. Right? This is an old school game, repurposed for education. Right? John Hattie's work is the most robust academic research that's out there relative to strategies and what works with kids. Tom, are you in this room? Nope. Tom, great work. Janine is really upset over in the corner. No woos from her. But she's a psychologist. Next question. Which of the following has the highest effect size? So I'm going to show you a bunch of strategies up here. Which of the following has the highest effect size? Which works best with kids? Is it feedback, reciprocal teaching, peer tutoring, or self-questioning? Again, it's not just enough to know, like, hey, John Hattie's work is really important. Let's know and let's start to learn and figure out what strategies authentically work with kids. Final 2 seconds. Lock it in. Interesting. Reciprocal teaching. Reciprocal teaching, I'll tell you this. Some of you are like, oh, reciprocal teaching, not on my radar. That's all right, not yet. Reciprocal teaching has an effect size of 0.74, which means when implemented with fidelity, reciprocal teaching will give you almost 2 years of academic growth over a single year's worth of time. That's something you need to put on your radar. And again, all of these strategies have an effect size that is greater than 0.4. The challenge for us when we get into the blended learning and personalization space is to figure out how to hold on to those old school things that work, but let's hold on to the old school things that give us the most bang for our buck. Let's check out the leaderboard. Who's this? Pioneer Rules? But who's the person on the trigger? Right here? What's your name? Austin. Austin, congratulations. You a psychologist too? At its core, what is reciprocal teaching, Austin? And the rest of you? At its core, what is reciprocal teaching? That's the question. Not enough to just know that these strategies exist. We have to know what they are. Is it a metacognitive strategy, a chunking strategy, a strategy where students teach students, or is it a close reading strategy? What the heck is reciprocal teaching? Okay. The fewest of you picked close reading. My friends, we have some work to do. We have some work to do, all right? Reciprocal teaching is a close reading strategy whereby kids consistently predict, clarify, question, and summarize as they read. It has an effect size of almost 2 years. Is it a strategy where students teach students? At its very end, you might get to that. But at its core, it is a close reading strategy, right? Again, not just enough to know these strategies exist, it's time to really develop a foundational understanding about what they are so that when we introduce tech tools, we can introduce tech tools the right way with strategies that we know work. Here we go. Lindsay, are you in here? There's a Lindsay in here, I'm sure, but not this one. Here we go. Question 505, last question. I'm using at least one high effect size strategy right now, right this moment. I'm using a high effect size strategy. What is it? Is it spaced versus mass practice, mastery learning, problem solving teaching, or is it direct instruction? Which strategy am I using right now? Lock it in the next 3 seconds. 2, 1, time. The strategy I'm using right now is direct instruction. Let me ask you this. Does direct instruction have a good or bad reputation in the educational space right now? Bad. We're being told all the time, oh, direct instruction, bad. But you know what? I'm using it right now. I have things that I need to tell you. I need to give you this information. I'm using direct instruction. The effect size for direct instruction is 0.57, which means when implemented with fidelity, you get almost 1.5 years worth of growth over a single year's worth of time. And you know what? You can inject digital tools to move direct instruction to a place where it's more engaging. What is one digital tool you can use to lift up direct instruction? Kahoot. Remember how I told you Kahoot was one of the most poorly used tools that I've seen used? When do I see Kahoot being used? During a class or at the end most of the time? At the end. If I had $1 for every time I've heard, guys, if you're good today, we'll do a Kahoot at the end. So, some of you are like, Kishnik, don't take that from me, man. That's my only management tool. It's all I've got. Yes, but I'm not trying to take it from you. I'm trying to help you use it better. Most people skip over the greatest thing that Kahoot offers us, which is what? The data. Most people want to skip straight to the leaderboard and skip over the most important thing, which is the data. Differentiation, individualization, and personalization live in a place where when we harvest data, we can use it in the moment to inform our instruction. You may not have noticed this, but when almost all of you got one of the questions wrong about reciprocal teaching, how much time did I spend on that slide? More or less? More, right? And in places where many of you got the question right, I spent less time. Because when we utilize data to inform our instruction, that is the place where differentiation, individualization, and personalization live. Right? Not to mention competition works. Worth noting, competition increases the capacity for learning in all mammals. Not just people, all mammals. Let's see who the winner is. Pioneer rules. Who's on the trigger for Pioneer? I'll give you a copy of my book as a prize. Who wants it? Somebody from Pioneer. You'll get it? And give it to her in the back? Awesome. Thank you very much. Give a hand to Pioneer and their crew. I did that at a big conference a few weeks ago, and somebody was like, oh, if I would have known there were prizes, I would have worked harder. And I thought, did you just say that out loud? Step number 1, when we sit down to design innovative blended learning, what's the first thing we focus on? Outcomes. Show me, show me, show me, show me, show me. The first thing we focus on is what? The second thing we focus on are strategies. What high effect size instructional strategies lift up our outcomes? The third thing we focus on, right? Go ahead and take your hands, put them on your belt like this. Third thing we focus on are tools. They are what? Tools. Show me, show me, show me. Even if you are not in this room, even if it's embarrassing for you, show me. Step number 3 is what? Tools. Third thing we focus on are tools. We ask ourselves, what digital tools can elevate high effect size to help us meet our? Very good, right? Step number 1, show me, show me, show me is? Step number 2? Louder? Step number 3? Good. We don't start thinking about digital tools until step number 3 of the metacognitive process. Your digital tools are not the end-all, be-all. We don't start with the question, what am I going to do with Chromebooks today? What am I going to do with collections today? What am I going to do with Poplet today? We ask ourselves, what's our outcome? What strategy helps us meet that outcome? And then how can digital tools lift up those strategies to help us meet the outcome? Once we have those things figured out, go down here by your knees like you're laying something out on a table. Step number 4 is we plan. We do what? Show and tell, show and tell, show and tell. Count of 3. Step number 4 is we plan. We plan, right? Because what gets planned gets done. What gets planned gets done, right? We plan for how we're going to use our digital to support our instructional To meet our academic. Very good. And then last but not least, we've got to figure out whether or not what we've designed is actually any good. So down here, stomp your feet. We assess for rigor, relevance. Say it with me. Rigor, relevance. Stomp it out. Rigor, relevance. Good. Step number 5 in the process, we ask ourselves, where do we fall in the rigor relevance framework? Or the SAMR model, or TPAC, or whatever it is that you guys have decided to use. We have to assess whether or not what we've designed is actually even any good. Where do we want to be? Quad A, B, C, or D in this model? D. I'll tell you what, I don't want to see teachers anymore down in quad A. You know what hurts my heart? It hurts my heart at the end of the school day when I see teachers walking out of the schools like this and kids skipping off to the bus. That's not my wish for you. That is not my wish for you. I want to see kids walking out, dragging their stuff behind them, and teachers skipping off to happy hour. That's my wish. That's my wish for you. I want kids to be doing the heavy cognitive lift. I want them to be the ones doing the work during the day, and you facilitating learning at a level that we've not been able to prior to the arrival of technology. That is my wish. And the way we accomplish that objective is simple. We start at step number 1, which is to do what? Say and do, show me, show me, show me, show me. Step number 1 is to determine the learning. Then select instructional. Choose digital. Make a grade. And then assess for. Turn to the person next to you. Review all 5 of those steps with the motions. 20 seconds. Go. Good. Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. Hold up your hands like this. Show me your fist. Show me your fists. On your right hand, put out your thumb. On your left hand, put out your pinky. Some of us are struggling already. For the longest time in education, we've been traveling this direction, this direction, this direction, and now all of a sudden, everyone in education seemingly is asking us to switch. Do that now. Oh no! So, you know what my favorite part of this is? My favorite part is when people look back at me and they're just like, I got this. And then they look down, whoa! Go back to the start. Go back to the start. Right hand thumb, left hand pinky. Welcome back to work, everyone. For the longest time, we've been traveling one direction. Everyone's asking us to switch, but the fact of the matter is, bold school teachers, really masterful bold school teachers know how to go back and forth from old school, new school, old school, new school. I've practiced, which is what we'll all need to do. We're not going to get it the first time. We're not going to get it the first time. Be content to fail forward in the pursuit of success. Be content to fail forward in the pursuit of success. Failure is not only welcomed, it is expected in the pursuit of excellent blended instruction. Today will not be the day you mastered blended learning. I'm sorry. I'm going to work really hard at it, but today will not be the day. Because here's what we know. What we know to be true is this. When professional development does what I'm doing right now, which is merely describes a skill to teachers, only 10% can master the skill and actually transition it. What does it need to really take off? Coaching, right? Anyone here ever been to a baseball game? Anyone heard of a baseball? Good. If you were to go to a Major League Baseball game right now, 2 hours before the game, what do every time? They practice. They work with coaches, even the best players on the planet. What everyone knows is that when people are coached through the awkward phase of implementation, more than 95% can replicate what they've seen. Coaching matters. So here's what I did. I took what I believed, I initially wanted to take the top 10. I was like, I can't narrow it down to 10. I took the top 11 most frequently used instructional strategies in classrooms all around the world. I listed their effect size. And then what I did in my book, Bold School, is I matched digital tools with high effect size instructional strategies, and provided examples of how I've coached teachers to implement those instructional strategies with specific digital tools. I'm really happy. My book, Bold School, has actually been endorsed by John Hattie, which I was really thrilled about. He calls it an essential part of every educator's toolbox. Feel free to pick it up as a great resource. Now, let me say this. All right? Let me leave you with one thing. I have 2 children, as you remember. Anyone recognize where this is? Yeah. This is the Royal Gorge, right? This is the Royal Gorge. So I decided just this last summer to take my kids to the Royal Gorge, right? It's a really beautiful place. If you haven't been, it's in Colorado. It's really beautiful. Again, like I told you, my daughter is 6 and my son is 8. And I decided, like, yeah, let's go to the Royal Gorge. It's a really cool place. There's this bridge there, and it's wide enough for one car to drive across at a time, but you can just go walk across it, and it's really cool because you can see the railroad ties there. There's kind of little spaces in between, and so you can kind of see down as you're walking. And the interesting thing is, this is what you look down at. So I thought to myself, let's take children there. So we did. I showed up with my 2 children, and as we're walking out onto the bridge, my son, who is 8 years old, guess what he does? He takes off across the bridge, and then he wants to look over the side. And he starts to climb up and look over the side of the bridge. And when he did that, I was standing just in front of my wife, and I heard a sound that I had never heard before. And it was her screaming his name, Everett, right? And I run out to get him, and I'm pulling him down off the side of this bridge, and I'm like, oh, Everett, and then we have a come to Jesus about choices right there in that moment, right? So I pull Everett down off the side of the bridge, and then I feel something on my ankle, and I turn around, it's my wife. She's grabbed onto my ankle. She's terrified of heights, and she has come out over the bridge like this. And she's holding onto my ankle, and she's yelling at my son, and then she's yelling at me, and I can't figure out how this is possibly my fault. And in the midst of all this commotion, I do a head count, 1, 2, 3. I brought more. I brought more. And I turn around to look for my daughter, and she is standing right at the start of the bridge, and she has not moved. And so I walk back to my daughter, Charlotte, and I say, Charlotte, come on, let's walk out with Daddy over the bridge. And she looks me dead in my eye, and she says, no, Daddy. And that's an unusual thing in my house because we have taught our children, like, you don't tell Mommy and Daddy no. And she looked me dead in my eye with like a prison confidence, like, no. I am not moving. And so now I'm just sitting here trying to convince her to walk across this bridge, and shortly after I pull my son down off the side, I'm locked in an argument with my 6-year-old daughter about doing the same thing, only the reverse. And I'm just like, Charlotte, come with Daddy. She's like, no, Daddy. And so I'm having this argument with my daughter at a tourist destination, which is always fun. And finally, like, I'm making some progress. I'm making some headway. Molly's crawling out with Everett. She's holding onto his arm, and I'm just like, hey, walk out with Daddy. Hold my hand. And she says, no, Daddy, hold my hand. I said, Charlotte, that's what I said. Hold my hand. She says, no, Daddy, hold my hand. I said, Charlotte, we're saying the same thing. I said, hold my hand. She looks me in my eye, and she says, no, Daddy, you hold my hand. And I said, Charlotte, what is the difference? And she looked up at me, and she said, Daddy, I know that if you hold my hand, you won't let go. I know. And in that moment, I was like, after this, we are going to the pony store. You get 2. Yours and your brother's. But I think about that moment a lot, right? I think about that moment a lot, especially as I stand with a group of teachers who are about to embark on the journey of blended learning. Because the 4 behaviors that showed up on that bridge at the Royal Gorge with my family are the exact same behaviors that we will all observe this year, right? When it comes to blended learning, you'll have people who get really excited about it. And they run out across the bridge, and you know what? They get a little overenthusiastic, and some of them fall overboard. Some of them are just like, I'm going to use computers with everything all the time. It's going to be amazing. And then you get to the holidays and you're just like, why am I a teacher? Well, this was a bad idea. Right? And then you get people who walk out with confidence. You get people who are just like, you know what? I'm going to do this, but I'm going to take it real slow and safe. And then you get people like my daughter, Charlotte. And here's what I found to be true 9 times out of 10. Right? If this is you, stop worrying. All right? Because here's what often happens. What often happens is teachers who are standing at this side of the bridge and are reluctant to move, it is so less often about that they are bad teachers. They are not bad teachers. I find 9 times out of 10, these are frightened teachers, right? And being a frightened teacher is different than being a bad teacher, right? And what I find is that so many teachers who are at this space and in a space of just being fearful, all they need is for somebody to hold on tight and not let them go and walk them through the process of what it looks like to do this with success. I'm committed to making sure we have help here to make this a successful school year for you. Your administrative teams are committed to that by virtue of the fact that I am here, that so many people are here to support you. I'm excited. I'm excited. 2017, 2018 is going to be a phenomenal school year. Find somebody, if you are nervous, if you are anxious about what's coming up in the blended learning and the personalized learning and individualized learning space, find somebody, they are out there, who will hold on tight to your hand and not let go. Thank you so much for being here with me this morning. I'll come back here. Feel free to listen to my podcast if you want to hear my wife make fun of me. She and I host it together. I've been told that she is the favorite part of the podcast because she just makes fun of me. If you're also interested in some of the other work that we do, feel free to follow me on Twitter. Hey, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell every single one of you in this room and watching from auditoriums around the district, hey, this is, forget me as a presenter, forget me as a fellow educator for just a moment. This is me as a parent to a group of educators. Thank you so much for all that you do and all that you endeavor to do this year on behalf of children. Parents, including myself, are so grateful, and we are so indebted to you for what you do. Thank you so much for being here. I'll stand here.
Then here we go. One last time. Give it up for Weston, please. I am so pumped for this year. I hope that you are. Let's get after it. Here we go. Thank you, everybody.